You got to do what you got to give the people what they want. That's the question you should be asking yourself all the time is what content should I make? Who should I make it for and why? And then be very honest with yourself about whether you did a good job of it or not. And I believe more than anything else, views are the way to judge that. If you're getting views on YouTube, you are winning. If you're not getting views on YouTube, then I think you got a little bit of work to do.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and wherever you're watching from. My name is Matt Pierce, host of the Visual Lounge. Today, we talk a lot about creating videos and using videos. We've talked to a lot of creators lately, but today we're going to bring the world of corporate and video, and particularly YouTube, together and talk about how perhaps you can do better with that, what you could do with it, why, if you're a business, you should be thinking about YouTube, and so much more. So we got a great guest today. Let's go ahead and introduce Finn McKenty today. So, joining us today is Finn McKenty, a seasoned expert in leveraging video, images, and words to build audiences and boost revenue. As a content creator, our guest has achieved remarkable milestones, including 100 million views on YouTube, a substantial following of over 650,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers on Instagram, and over 10,000 on LinkedIn. So he's got lots of expertise, a lot of people listening to him. He's also done a lot of great things for brands like Abercrombie & Fitch, Swiffer, Febreze, Red Bull, Element, Nike, and so many others, including Creative Live and URM Academy. So with that said, please help me welcome Finn McKenty to the Visual Lounge. Hey, Finn.
Good morning. I'm officially welcoming Finn McKenty to the Visual Lounge.
Perfect.
My goal is to be like one of those athletes at the press conference that talks about myself in the third person, myself really learned a lot of things today out on the field today. And, myself's got a lot to work on, but myself is confident that myself can come back and be the best version of myself that myself is seeing this season.
Absolutely. I love it. So this is going to be the most fun episode ever, I can tell. So Finn, you've done a lot in with video and stuff. The place where we always like to start, we ask almost all of our guests a very simple question at the beginning is, if you're thinking about making video, what's one tip you would just give the audience about making better video?
The number one tip I would have is always, always, always put the audience first. Your job is to make the content that they want to see. Secondary point to that is that production values, in my opinion, are rarely important, or at least not as important as many people think they are. So spend more time thinking about what is going to make your audience's life better in some way or another, and less time worrying about cameras and lenses and, color grades and all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I love that advice. Great advice, especially for our audience. I think content rules. Everything else is, you obviously don't want it to be garbage, but you can get better later, right?
Audio matters a lot. I think video, not so much.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so Finn, you've worked with a lot of channels. You've got lots of kind of brand experience, and I want to have this conversation about working particularly with YouTube and brands, because I think there's a lot of maybe misunderstanding about what a role of YouTube can play for brands. So from your high level perspective, what role should YouTube play if you're a brand trying to, grow your business?
Yeah, I don't think there's any one answer to that, but that is the exact question that you should be asking yourself, which is you see a lot of these companies that have a YouTube channel, and what it looks like is just a collection of videos. Like basically this is the discard pile, we made this video for a webinar. Why not put it on our YouTube channel? Maybe someone will watch it. That is what I see when I look at a lot of company YouTube channels. And, you might think something is better than nothing, but I don't actually know if that's true, because putting out a disorganized slapdash YouTube channel, I think is brand negative. You look at that, does that make you think more or less highly of the brand? So in my opinion, you want to, if you're going to do it at all, I think you should do it right. And there's a couple different ways that I think it can help a company grow, sort of depending on what type of company you are. If you are a B2C company, YouTube has 2 billion users on it, right? It is the second largest search engine after Google.com. It's actually a lot easier to rank on YouTube than it is on Google. So if you're a B2C company, it's 2 billion people out there ready to hear from you. And I would say that YouTube is far less competitive for businesses than other social media platforms. So that's opportunity number one. If you are a B2B company, I think the opportunity is potentially even greater, because think about this. So I get recognized all the time, like at the grocery store, and just people stop me on the street and say hi to me and yell my name and want to take a picture and stuff, which is crazy to me because, in my mind, I'm just a guy that makes videos in the room that you're looking at right now in my house. But YouTube, like, people form this like really deep connection with you on YouTube. They feel like they already know you. They feel like you're friends with them. Like, I'm sure this is true for all of us. We've watched people on YouTube for years, and like, you feel like you know that person, right? And so if they reached out to you and asked you for a favor, you'd be like, yeah, of course. I love your videos. Happy to help, right? Now, imagine you had that experience going into meetings or getting on calls or something like that, where the person sitting across from you, rather than this being the first time they've ever met you, if they feel like they've known you for years and they know your story and they've seen you do something silly or entertaining or heard you tell some sort of like, some sort of powerful story about how you got to where you are and why you do it, like, what do you think would that do? What do you think that would do for your ability to close those deals? So to me, those are sort of the two broad ways that it could help your company.
Yeah, so I've got two questions, and the first one that comes from this is you talked about that detriment of like it becoming the dumping ground, right? And I've definitely seen that brands are just like, we've got a video, we don't know what to do with it, let's put it on YouTube. If let's say I was working for a company and they're at that state, and I come in and I'm going to try to help raise that, is it better just to leave that content, or do you think it's better just like flush it out, start new, even if you're maybe losing some of the metrics and analytics that you have?
What are you really losing?
Yeah.
4 views a month? I don't think you're losing anything.
Perfect.
So I would, I don't think there's any benefit to the world of making a poorer signal to noise ratio of your content. I don't see how that helps you at all.
I love it. So the other question I have is, oftentimes what I see with corporations particularly is they're very afraid of personality. Like the brand personality comes across as, we need to be the brand, and the brand is very staid, or it's very flat. And it's not that it's a bad brand. It's just that's what brands are often, because they're trying to appeal to a mass audience. So what role does personality, do you think, play in a corporate YouTube channel?
I think it plays a huge role. There's what you have to understand is that regardless of what your business is, like, you could sell gravel, you could sell, B2B accounting software. It doesn't matter what it is. Regardless of what your business is, you are competing at every moment of every day with everyone in the world who makes content for the resource of attention, right? Mm-hmm. So like when people are at work, it's like there's a lot of time people maybe aren't working so hard at work, and so they're looking at TikTok or YouTube or whatever else it is, and maybe, kind of goofing off a little bit. And so you are competing with Mr. Beast at every moment. You're competing with, whoever else. You're competing with ESPN, like all the other things that your audience could be paying attention to. And I understand why people are afraid to have personality, but you got to ask yourself, at any given moment, why should someone pay attention to this piece of content that I'm putting out when they could be paying attention to Mr. Beast or, whatever, ESPN or whatever else it is? And so to get back to the question of personality, I think it's going to be a real challenge for these companies that sort of put on what I'll call their brand handcuffs, which is the set of beliefs in which they have convinced themselves that it's not okay to have personality and it's not okay to put out content that people actually enjoy watching. And my question would be, what is the actual downside of that? What do you believe is going to happen if you put out a piece of content with some personality? What do you think is actually going to happen? Let's look at the downside versus the upside of that. The downside is that you put something out and you get some negative comments, and, probably it doesn't even matter, because for the most part, people that comment, that leave negative comments, like, I think generally speaking, are just unhappy people that were never going to support you in the first place. But let's say you realize that you really made a mistake and that people are really unhappy with this. Well, then you just delete the piece of content and it goes away, because unless you're, already a really successful creator, nobody really cares that much. So you put this thing out, people didn't like it, you delete it, and then everyone's going to forget about it. So that's the downside. Obviously, like there is a way that you can really, really, really step in it, but it's very, very, very rare. And the potential upside is that this video goes viral and gets millions of views, and it changes the trajectory of your company forever. So to me, if you look at sort of the risk profile here, there's like very asymmetric upside versus downside. And you're never going to capture that upside if it's like anything else in life. It's risk reward. You got to take some risks if you want to win. If you want to keep putting out videos that are kind of boring and safe and get 75 views, you can keep doing that, but I don't think that's how you win in business.
So let's dive into this a little bit deeper about personality, because I think I agree with what you're saying, right? The kind of the balance of rewards versus risk is greatly exaggerated towards the benefit, right? So if you were consulting with someone, and I'm not asking to give away all your great tips or whatever, but in terms of
I will give you all my secrets.
Perfect. In terms of developing that personality, because I do think obviously brands are going to put on some level of handcuffed to some degree because they have standards of things that
you need to.
Yeah, you have to even if it's just for consistency. So what?
But again, you have to ask yourself, why is there inherent value in consistency?
Good question.
I don't think there is.
So okay. Well, let's run with these as assumptions, because that's something as a creator I think about, like, is what level of consistency is important. Like, I do a podcast. It's got the same format. We start with the same way. And maybe that's the wrong thing. Maybe I should be throwing more darts.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Now, I do think in general, so to be specific about consistency, I do think that once you have something that's working, generally speaking, you should stick with it. But until then, you don't actually know what's working. And so, like, I think there's just a lot of unstated assumptions with the way people think about content that are holding them back. For example, the idea that you have to be consistent to the level of like, oh, well, our logo is always green. We can't make the logo red on this thumbnail because, our brand color is green. Yeah, but does anybody really care?
Right.
I mean, take even a brand like Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola made the logo green somewhere, I mean, what's going to happen? Like, the world is not going to stop turning. It's not going to hurt their business.
It would probably actually get attention. People would say,
right,
why is Coke green?
Right. So my point being here is that there's a lot of the ways that a lot of the reasons why brands struggle with YouTube or content in general is because they have put on the handcuffs of consistency and brand voice and things like that, which come from, I don't know where that comes from, another world, I guess, where maybe those things were important. But now the only thing that's important is connecting with your audience. And maybe that means if your brand guidelines are so rigid that they prevent you from creating content that people respond to, well, then maybe you need to change your brand guidelines, right? Because the whole premise here is that you have established guidelines that will make you successful in business. But if those guidelines are no longer making you successful in business, then they're the wrong guidelines, right? It's like, imagine a football team being like, well, we always run the ball on the third down. And they're like, well, yeah, but maybe you should pass. No, we always run it on the third down.
Right.
You should run the play that is going to get you to the to the end zone.
And I hate to be too self-referential to some of your work. That I mentioned to you at the beginning before we started recording that I watched your video about the 1991 and what a great year that was for music. Yeah. And I think about, there's something that you said that's kind of connecting here, is you talked about with Nirvana in particularly that, all of a sudden we went from this very pop, polish, MC Hammer pants, Janet Jackson, Paul Abdul dancing with a mouse kind of thing, right? To guys that look, guys that look like they came out of a dive, the dive bar, and and how that has changed everything. And had Nirvana maybe stuck with the kind of brand look of what a rock star is, would it have worked? So So I love what you're saying though, because I think it's like consistency is good for when it's good, but don't be handcuffed by it because it will constrain you and maybe you won't make the next leap to the next
Exactly.
thing.
And at the end of the day, you know, users, consumers, viewers, they don't care about your brand guidelines. They only care about, do I want to watch this video, right? And so I understand that, especially for larger companies, like there is a need for some process that is going to make things a little bit less efficient. And I get that, but it's necessary when you have a large company. You can't have 75 versions of the logo floating around and all that stuff. I get that. I've worked at, big Fortune 500 companies and stuff like that. However, I think the balance is swung so far at most companies in the direction of being inflexible that is sort of the root cause. They won't try new things because they've convinced themselves that they're not allowed to. But who is telling you that you're not allowed to? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
and I think there's two, and to be specific about the consistency thing, I think there's two sides of this coin, and it depends where you are. If you are already if you're already successful with your content, then yes, be consistent. If you find something that works, stick with it. There is a need for some experimentation, but by and large, if you have success, triple down on that thing and do not deviate from it. But if you have not yet found success, you need to take big swings until you do find the thing that works. And I think that's the part where there's very few companies that do YouTube very well. And I think the root of it is that they're not willing to take those big swings.
So if I was a new creator and particularly working for a brand, no presence, not worried about this baggage, I'm willing to take some big swings. What advice would you give to that person as they're out there starting? Like, YouTube is like one of these things. There's so many things that, like, there's so much advice coming from so many different locations. It's like, oh my gosh, where do I even start besides just make something? But like, what would you tell that person? They're like, man, I'm struggling here, Finn, help me out.
Well, first of all, everybody struggles in the beginning. It's hard. It's really hard. So don't beat yourself up. And if you are in a place where you're like, I'm just making stuff, I'm just throwing it at a wall and see what sticks, I actually don't think that's bad. That's what, to a large extent, that's what you should do. I mean, I made hundreds of videos for like almost a year before I got anything that sticks. And I think pretty much every creator does. So I think it's an inevitable part of the process of just feeling like overwhelmed and I have no idea what I'm doing and nothing is working and I have no clue if this is ever going to work. Like, that is part of the process. It is not fun, but hang in there. The second thing is that's sort of like, I think in a lot of ways, the hardest part of this is just having the mental fortitude of like showing up to practice every day and getting smashed and then showing up at practice again anyway the next day. That's tough, but it's part of the process. The second thing is you have to, like I mentioned earlier, you have to just like really ruthlessly force yourself to put the audience first. Like, never, ever, ever make a video or any piece of content until you have answered the question of like, how is this going to make my audience's life better in some way? That could be entertaining them, it could be educating them, or it could be inspiring them. Ideally, you would do all three, but it's pretty rare for people to hit all of those three. If you can even do one of them reasonably well, then I think you're going to succeed. So, what you see from a lot of companies is their content, I don't think they've answered that question because it's very self-promotional. It's like, oh, here, we're announcing this new feature that we just rolled out. Cool, but for most companies, is anybody really waiting on the edge of their seat for your new feature announcement? If you're like Figma or Notion or one of these companies that has just incredibly tight product market fit and your users are absolutely rabid for what you do, maybe it'll work. But even then, Figma does pretty well with their product announcements. But even then, a lot of these companies, if it's just, look at AWS, for example, their YouTube videos get literally like 400 views. Okay. And this is AWS. What did they make? Like, I don't remember off the top of my head, but something like, $10 billion in profit last quarter, right? Just like the most astronomically profitable company in the world, or one of them. And nobody cares, right? Like, your brand name, people on YouTube don't care how big of a company you are. They don't care about your brand. What they care about is, am I going to click on this video because it's going to make my life better? And so if they're just like, announcing Redshift, blah, 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 some new feature to this database, why would anyone watch that? And so there's a way, but if you do want to talk about this new feature release, there's a way to do that. You just have to spin what you do is start with what business objective am I trying to achieve, and how do I wrap that in something that is engaging to the audience? So if you have a new database feature, well, how do you wrap that in a title that people would care about? It's like, so, tired of, blah, 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 tired of whatever, insert painful thing, we can help, right? And so now someone might click on that because an engineer is like, oh my God, I've spent 20 hours in the mat last month wrestling with this irritating thing with our current database solution, and it is destroying my life. I would give anything to make this pain go away. Well, now maybe they'll click on that video, right? So it's like, how do you wrap the thing that you want to say in the context of something that is relevant to your audience? That's basically the central challenge to YouTube.
Yeah. Wow. That is well worth the time being able to spend with you to get that advice, because I love that. So. Be relevant, be helpful. I mean, inspiring if you can, fun, humor and entertainment. I think probably for a lot of brands is hard.
You don't be allergic to having fun and to making content. It's like companies they're allergic to making content that is actually enjoyable to watch, and it's bizarre. Like, for 99% of companies, nobody's going to be offended if you're having a little fun. If you are like a funeral home or something, you need to be a little bit more delicate. But for 99% of companies, there is no reason why you need to be afraid of having fun.
Yeah, your funeral home example reminds me of a post that was like, it was a billboard, continued text and driving. It was sponsored by a funeral home, right? Like, but even there, there's room for that.
Even that, we put the fun in funeral.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, man, Finn, this is awesome. I guess we're going to get into our speed round questions here in just a second, but kind of to wrap this idea up, we've got these corporate YouTube creators who, we've given them kind of purpose to get started, right? We're taking the big swings, we're trying some things, we're having some fun. Mm-hmm. When all comes said and done, and as you've worked in these big companies, you're probably aware metrics matter, right? People want to know that we're getting value for what we're investing in. So for you, what are the metrics that matter most? I know there's a ton of them. It might be different by certain kind of circumstance, but like, what's the one that you're looking at right now and saying like, hey, this is how I know I'm being successful?
Views. That's it. That's your North Star. And the reason why a lot of people seem to have resistance to this too, because, and bring this up, they're like, well, we don't really care about views on YouTube because, we're just focusing on reaching the right people, or we're trying to conversions and blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing is everything is downstream of views. That is the top of the funnel. And that is how to answer your question, that is how you know whether you're being successful on YouTube is if you're getting views. Obviously, there are secondary metrics that matter as well. Like you want to know, are people, signing up for our product or, contacting us? Are they becoming leads or whatever? That stuff matters too. But views are the thing that will unlock all of that. So that is what I would optimize for first and foremost.
Awesome. Great answer. And one that I know I've struggled with, right? Like views versus engagement versus all those other things. But You're right. Everything flows from, if someone doesn't see it, nothing else happens.
Nothing else matters.
Awesome. All right, Finn, we're going to go into our speed round questions. So these are meant to be kind of quick, fun, a little bit more fun questions and answers. And we'll play a little stinger here and then we'll dive right in.
Perfect.
All right, we're going to bring up our dice cam. So we got our dice set up here. I got 12-sided die. It's going to determine whichever questions we're going to ask here. So
roll the 1d12.
That's right, 1d12. You've been a barbarian before playing.
That's right. I'm great. More of a rogue, but okay. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we could have done 2d6s, but then we'd have to change the scheduling here and numbers. Okay. So the first question here is number 10. You've obviously done a lot of things, but if you had to move away from what you're doing now with your career, you get to choose anything in the world you do, what would you do?
The thing that makes me happy in life is helping other people solve problems that are holding them back from their own goals. So I'd have to think about the best way of doing that, but that's what I want to do. I like to help people. I want them to come and say, hey, after we talked about that thing that's been driving me crazy for months and months and months, now like my problem is solved. Thank you. That's what makes me happy.
Perfect. All right, let's go to our next die roll here. Number 8. Okay, so number 8. I've watched some of your videos. You do a lot with music. You do a lot. You're kind of covering a broad spectrum of things. Your YouTube channel reviews, things like that. But where do you turn for inspiration when you're looking to say like, hey, I want to go back to the big swings, right? Like, where are you looking to get inspired by?
At the end of the day, my job is to provide for our family. So that's what inspires me is, I've got a wife and a kid to support, and, views and comments and all that stuff is all cool. But at the end of the day, if I'm providing for them, then I'm happy. And that's what keeps me going every day.
Yeah. Awesome. As a dad of 4, I feel that, man. I don't know how it works. They eat. It's good.
Yeah.
So, let's go one more. Not kidding. Okay, one more here. Number 11. Okay, this is a little bit more fun one. If you had to pick an image that represents you, what would it be? It could be an image of anything.
A sleepy senior golden retriever, because golden retrievers are nice. They just want to be left alone. They just want to go take a nap in the sun and maybe get a couple pets here and there. They don't ask for much. That's me.
Yeah, I like it. Well, hopefully you'll get to live out that fantasy at some point. That image comes to become a reality. Well, Finn, this has been just awesome. Thank you for your great advice and wisdom that you've shared with us. If people want to learn more from you, they want to connect with you, maybe they want to get a channel review from you, where should they turn?
You can go to finnmckenty.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat with anyone about anything. So yeah, hit me up.
Perfect. And we'll make sure the links are in all the places where you can actually click on links or copy and paste those links. Last question we always ask people, Finn, is kind of that high level summary. So Finn, what is your final take?
My final take is you got to give the people what they want. That's the question you should be asking yourself all the time is, what content should I make? Who should I make it for and why? And then be very honest with yourself about whether you did a good job of it or not. And I believe more than anything else, views are the way to judge that. If you're getting views on YouTube, you are winning. If you're not getting views on YouTube, then I think you got a little bit of work to do.
Great advice. Finn, thank you again for joining me in the Visual Lounge. All right, everybody, that was Finn. I mean, what great practical advice. If you are thinking about starting your own YouTube channel for yourself, or you're working on it for your business, and I do recommend you have a YouTube channel for your business, this is such great wisdom. Take some big swings, figure out what your audience needs, what's going to resonate with them, and then worry about consistency. And I know, look, I've got some things to experiment with, I want to try, we want to do here on the Visual Lounge, but it's guests like Finn that get me inspired to do this work. And I'm so grateful for that wisdom, because what that's going to allow you and hopefully me to do is really think about how do we use the medium of video to do the things that we want our company to do? And what do we want our customers to be able to do? And video is just such a great enabler. So I think part of that, though, is something that if you listen to a previous episode, the one that came out at the end of the year that was super short, I think there's this idea we got to give ourselves time to try, time to experiment, and be looking at the things that matter most. As Finn said, if you're not getting views, it doesn't matter. So all really great advice. I hope you'll take that. I hope you give yourself some time to set up your channel, to build your channel, to fix your channel, to refresh and do what you need to do. And, give yourself the space to level up every single day. Thanks, everybody.